Hi, Rob.
Hi, Tom.
Hi
Hi, Scott.
guys,
How you doing? How's it going?
very well. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Let's see. Oh, we've got some people joining already. Just gonna wait a couple of minutes. Yeah, I can see people joining. Great. Rob, can you see the slides?
Yeah, I've got the normal Red Helix security as a
Great.
service flash screen. Yeah.
Thank you. Just give it a minute or so to let everyone drop in. Have a look. Great, we've got a good audience. I think we'll kick off. So welcome everybody to this Red Helix webinar. On the line today, we've got myself, Tom Exelby. I'm head of cybersecurity for Red Helix. I'm joined today by Rob Pocott, our technology director, and Scott Williams, our operations director. The aim of this webinar is to have a look at the cybersecurity landscape as we see it from our perspective in Red Helix, based on some research that we've been doing, talk about how we can navigate some of the issues that we're seeing and some of the current threats, and talk about the benefits that cybersecurity can bring to your business. So where are we? It's currently October 2024. There's been a market slowdown in the spending of large organizations due to inflationary pressures. We've got DORA and NIS2 enforcement on the horizon for UK cybersecurity businesses, as well as the UK Cybersecurity and Resiliency Bill, which we're getting snippets of from the UK government, but we've just had a general election earlier in the year. A new government has come in, and so we're not expecting that bill to be released until summer 25, but there's building understanding as to what that bill is going to look like and the implications it's likely to have on small to medium-sized businesses in the UK. What we can say at this point in time is ransomware is still the most prolific threat to small to medium-sized enterprises, and between Rob and I will unpack that in the first part of this webinar as we look at current threats and what we're seeing out in the market and what we're seeing from our clients. We're also expecting to see a rise of as-a-service cyber weapons, and again, we'll unpack that and how they're coming from the dark web and being quite accessible to cybersecurity criminals. And we're going to look into how we are creating solutions to solve these problems and how we can help businesses with their cybersecurity and reduce their risk. So first of all, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about cyber threats and the cyber landscape as we see it from Red Helix. And so I'll bring Rob into the conversation. Rob, we've got a great slide that's going to show some of the things that we've been seeing. But from your perspective, what do you think is particularly important to small to medium-sized businesses at the moment?
I think you mentioned it already, Tom. The ransomware is the one everybody talks about. It's always in the news. It's the one which is probably going to affect small to medium-sized businesses the most, and probably has the most detrimental effect on those businesses. The whole cybersecurity arena is we like names, we like acronyms, we like inventing new names for existing things. But ransomware has always been and probably fundamentally will always be the biggest threat, particularly to the small and medium-sized business.
And I think it's particularly important at this time when we're looking at some of the new regulations that are coming into play that are all focused around broader resilience for cybersecurity in the UK. And I think that has a particular impact on small to medium-sized businesses because we know that 90% of the UK economy is exactly that. It's made up of those that meet the criteria for small to medium-sized enterprises. And so those securing that large proportion of the ecosystem that makes up our economy is really important. And I guess for them to really create resilience within their own organizations, they need to look at the breadth of attack, because it's not just ransomware, is it, that that they're
No,
going to be seeing?
but what you'll find is I spend a lot of my time talking to very large organizations and very small organizations. And although they have the same worries and same concerns, what they don't have is the same resources, skill set, and money behind them to try and focus on solving some of those problems. But fundamentally, the issue is the same. There's this kind of theory in the internet, sorry, in cyberspace, that that small businesses aren't vulnerable to ransomware attacks because they're not big enough to be known about or seen by the hackers, which is fundamentally wrong. That the hackers don't discriminate between the size of the company, and the value of the company. They just want to try and exploit money from whoever they can. And if that happens to be a big company, small company, medium-sized company, they don't really care. The tricks and tactics they use are exactly the same. The threats they use are exactly the same. But what can happen in small businesses, and we've seen this over and over again over the last number of years, is the number of small businesses that don't survive a ransomware attack or any other attack for that matter, because of the expense, the resources, the reputational loss, and just the cost of recovering from those attacks is bigger than the company itself.
Yeah, it's a massive risk for a small business, and it's something that's really difficult to quantify. But at the same time, it can be existential for that business. That they unless they've got a large sum of cash that they've devoted just to sit in the bank in preparation to pay a ransomware request, then that they're likely going to be in difficult water if they haven't got anything in place to support them in recovery. I think
it's not even just in recovery, Tom. It's like when you look at a small organization, have they got an incident plan in place? Have they tested that incident plan? We know large organizations, they have disaster recovery plans. They've been around for like 30 years. They were primarily designed when, if a data center caught fire, what happens there? And over the years, they've been translated into, if we get a cyber attack, what happens here? So for those large organizations, those procedures and methods and thought processes are already in place. For the SMEs out there, they're probably just getting into cybersecurity and understanding what it means, and not having the workforce to do things like incident plans and incident planning and rehearsals. Just means they're more vulnerable.
I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's that level of talent and resources that you can have in-house to be able to have the knowledge and expertise to be able to go through how you would protect yourself, how you would mitigate risks, and how you would respond. And that's just really tricky for a small to medium-sized business, especially as I highlight the economic pressures in the industry at the moment, as we are in October 24. I think ransomware being a mechanism for throwing the spanner in the works of a business, but from your perspective, how are they actually deploying this ransomware? How are they getting into these systems, and what could be done about it?
It's a very good question, because we always talk about the end result of security breaches, in this case ransomware, but actually how they get into the systems, they're all very similar. So phishing, we've all talked about phishing emails in the past. We get sent an email supposedly from our bank, asking me to log in to make sure some transaction was right or wrong. And it's just basically harvesting your credentials. So that's the first way into your network. Malware just delivered as email attachments. If you're a big organization or a small organization, you've got lots of staff of different skill sets of different disciplines throughout the business, and sending an email to them with an attachment saying, this is the Excel document we talked about last week or whatever, please open it and confirm it's right. That's an easy way of getting malware into an environment. There's drive-by attacks, so getting people to go to your compromised websites to get malware downloaded onto your PCs. And of course, we can't move for software vulnerabilities in all the applications we're using these days. So if you're a small business and you're using certain applications which are known to be vulnerable, then the attackers will use those known vulnerabilities. They don't have to discover new vulnerabilities. They're out there in the wild. And unfortunately, a lot of small businesses and big businesses, their patching regimes aren't really up to scratch. So, you get the big issue of a vulnerability gets disclosed and publicized and talked about. So good cybersecurity companies can stop those attacks. But in doing so, they alert all the hackers about vulnerabilities. And if you're not patching your systems up on a very regular basis, there's going to be a window in time where those hackers can use those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and I think going back to the point about how how these hackers are actually getting into systems, like a large proportion of what is being seen at the moment is through valid credential compromise, which is where they've bought some credentials from the dark web and simply use those credentials to log in. And the basic cyber hygiene that can combat those type of attack vectors really straightforward. If you change your password every however many months, you can render those compromised credentials invalid because you've changed it.
Don't use the same password on 6 different systems. Don't have a common password kind of way you remember it. So today it's password 1, and next month it's password 2, and next month it's password 3. These are all human things which we do to help us remember our passwords. But they're very, very algorithmic. And if you're a hacker, you can start saying, okay, well, I've got some compromised passwords. For that company, they all seem to start with a capital letter. They seem to be 8 characters long, and they end with a number. Once you've got that kind of information, it's not difficult to start doing brute force attacks. But very targeted brute force attacks, no longer just random character strings, but if it's in the right format, and it always seems to be the last number goes up once a month and stuff like that. It's very, very easy to start using technology to break those passwords.
It's such a web of different types of attack vectors, and I think that that leads us on quite nicely to talking to Scott and about how at Red Helix we've managed to look at the problem set, which is well articulated on the complex slide we've got in front of us, and try and unpack that into how we can create solutions. And Scott, I think we've done that absolutely. So I think if you can unpack, how you got from starting from scratch to where we are with our service, I think that'd be a really cool story.
Yeah, sure. I will do my best, Tom, because it's a big question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, as Rob said, we live in an opportunistic world now. A lot of attacks are not specifically targeted. They're just out there in the ether trying to find open networks that they can compromise. I mean, the threat landscape is increasingly complex and dynamic, as we know. We live in a fully connected world with advanced technology and AI, and we're all benefiting from it, right? But as Rob said, the cyber criminals are also taking advantage of this technology, and it's challenging, right? The marketplace for cybersecurity is huge, as you can see on the slide. It's pretty confusing. There's literally hundreds of tools on the market now, making it really difficult to know where to start when thinking about protecting your network. Different tools offer unique advantages and perspectives. So certainly at the moment, there isn't kind of a one size fits all, one answer to solving your problem. You do need a comprehensive suite of tools to be effective in terms of your cybersecurity, because you do need that layered defense against the variety of threats out there. So it's pretty much inevitable that you're going to end up with multiple vendors and multiple contracts, which can be a pain to manage if you're looking in this space. We also know there's a skills shortage in the UK, so it's hard to find and recruit expertise in this space. And notwithstanding kind of all of that, many of the security tools out there generate a lot of information 24/7. So a lot of companies, even if they've got the right tools, find it really difficult to resource and prioritize the time to respond to genuine threats. So at Red Helix, we've tried to take that complexity away. We've chosen some key partners to work with that allow us to deliver integrated services that work with each other, that suit the requirements for our target, which is the UK mid-market. And we want to offer services that give maximum protection while allowing us to provide services at fair, transparent and reasonable prices. So I think we offer services in what I kind of see as 4 key areas: threat monitoring, remote access, security training, which is really important, as Rob alluded to, and brand reputation. So modern threat monitoring. So this covers your endpoints, networks, overall observability with SIEM, security information and event management. And this is kind of the proactive approach where you're constantly monitoring your network. We offer remote access services with ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access, which is a modern approach to protecting network resources and is a replacement for your traditional VPNs. We offer security awareness training. You know, again, as we were speaking about earlier, this is really important because even today, a significant percentage of cyber breaches are through email phishing attacks. So it's really important that we educate users so that they can they know how to spot and not respond to any of these types of attacks via email. And then finally, brand reputation. So we're focusing on domain and email security to ensure that emails aren't spoofed, domain names are protected, and ultimately we're protecting companies' reputation.
It must be really complicated to, you know, come up with all the different vendors that to pick. You know, have you got a series of criteria that you've used to pick the different software packages? You know, because we're not just one single software vendor. We've tried to pick the best, or at least what we think is the best in each of the different categories.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we like we say, there's a lot of choice out there. So we generally we're looking for partners that offer the right type of services for the mid-market, that are good. They can do exactly what we need them to do, but they're at a price point that allows us to, you know, pull together a service that is interesting for our customers. You know, generally we are providing services that are more cost effective than for organizations to recruit people and buy the tooling themselves. So, you know, we've partnered with, you know, who are the partners? We have CrowdStrike. We've partnered with SideGlass so CrowdStrike for endpoint, SideGlass for network, who are now WatchGuard, Sumo Logic for our SIEM, KnowBe4, who's really well known in the UK for security awareness training, and Redsift for email and domain security.
And I think, you know, what we see from a lot of our clients when they come to us, they're saying things like, you know, we've got all these security tools, or maybe we've just got one sort of security tool. And managing one security tool is already filling up their capacity of the amount of resources they can afford to put towards their own security. You know, how have you managed to turn those 4 or 5 different tools into a service so that, you know, we can actually provide, you know, real value for our clients?
Yeah, well, it's again, big question. It's a difficult one. So we haven't just tried to differentiate through our service offerings and partnerships. We've also worked really hard on integrating our services together. So all of the products in our service offering are sharing information. We've put a huge amount of effort into hiring the right people, getting the team structure right, making sure that we've got good processes in place. We manage everything ourselves through ServiceNow. right the way through to being able to simplify, our quoting and the pricing around our package services. If you take our SOC, we're a UK built, well, we have a UK built 24/7 SOC in Aylesbury. We put a lot of emphasis on customer services, actually. We're a cybersecurity company, but being able to deliver the service wrap is really important. So loads of emphasis on customer services and training. We tend to want to bring in people who are early career and then train them both in cybersecurity and customer services to deliver that great experience to our clients. A lot of work has gone into our own ability to scale. So we make sure that we can maintain our service levels through what we call a pod structure. So these are small teams, pods, that are dedicated to a subset of our clients. And then we base the thresholds of those pods on the number of clients and endpoints that are under management. So this way, as our clients grow, we don't detriment the service. We just simply create additional pods to support our customers.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, delivering that service, especially when you're talking about security, it's always based around that trust, I think. And so maintaining really good level of service and building and fostering that relationship with our clients as
Yeah.
partners, I guess, is really important.
I think Scott made a really good point there that when you look at today's threats, it's no point just having an alarm system which is just ringing all the time. You'll get hundreds, if not thousands, of events every day, every hour, and it could be one event, one actual big attack, which is firing off like 30 or 40 different alarms from different bits of services and bits of tools. And
Yeah.
what our system does is actually combine those into a human understandable event.
Exactly.
Rather than bombard one of our customers with like 50 alarms and go fill your boots. It's like, okay, what does that mean for my business? If we're seeing this event and this event and this event in these quantities on these times of days and these kind of attacks, what does that mean to you, Mr. Customer? And I think that's the important bit of glue we stick into the system.
And if you
correlate everything.
exactly, Rob. And if you look at the slide you're showing at the moment, although I've listed off a whole bunch of services that we can provide as a company, our flagship offering, which is this slide, is threat monitoring with our managed detect and response MDR service. And just as Rob said, this brings together three of our modern threat monitoring services that I mentioned previously: EDR, NDR, and SIEM. So that's CrowdStrike, SideGlass, now WatchGuard, and Sumo Logic. And MDR is a packaged offering because even though you can buy the services individually, you really do need all three to get that full, surveillance across the network. So the analogy that I like to use is the car analogy. You need a chassis and an engine and wheels for a car to function properly. Each are really important, but you wouldn't buy them separately unless you're a real car enthusiast. What most people do is they want to buy the car. So we've integrated all three services together into ServiceNow, into our SOC, so you get that pre-built car. Yes, you can buy EDR on its own, and it will work, but you're not going to get that full kind of coverage, that full surveillance on your network.
And I think that's so important, given the range of threats that we saw in that first slide and had that first conversation on. And I think where we've strayed with our conversation, takes us really nicely to this next slide, where I think we've actually talked around a lot of the operational benefits already with Scott, talking about how we're, with the solution that we've put together, it's able to improve your detection and response, resource allocation being really important. If you think of all those tools that make up our offering, you need a specialist on that particular tool to understand how it, lives, breathes, and talks, so that you can really get the most from the tooling. What I wanted to focus on with this slide as well is how you take it to the next level. We've see with a lot of our clients, they really struggle to articulate the organizational benefits to the people in their organizations that hold the purse strings. And what I've tried to do on the right-hand side is really distill it down to sort of 5 key bullet points, to give people food for thought as to how they can articulate the conversation when they're talking about enhancing their cybersecurity, or even why some senior executives need to care about cybersecurity. I think with the regulation change and the regulatory landscape in the UK, credibility through compliance is going to become even more important. And that links, I think, to the third bullet point as well, which is access to larger contracts. We see a lot of small businesses coming to us with a contract from a much larger organization that they want to work for, and they've been handed this contract, and it's a real deal breaker for their small business. But the contract is stipulating that they really take cybersecurity seriously, and that's because it links to the fourth bullet point, which is supply chain security. The larger organizations are now becoming much more savvy and much more interested in who is within their ecosystem, who's within their supply chain, and are they taking cybersecurity seriously? And it's a real benefit to be able to approach those people to say, we want to work with you. We've got a great widget. We've got a great service. And by the way, you don't have to worry about our cybersecurity because we've implemented some really good measures. We understand the risk that we're managing, and this is how we're complying with our regulations. Growth and innovation, I think of the house metaphor here, where you're building a house, but you need decent foundations. Otherwise, when you get to plumbing in your third floor snooker room, if you don't have good foundations, the whole thing's going to fall down. And I think cybersecurity and security in other guises as well is really important to have as a foundation to then support your growth and give you the space for your expertise to really flourish through innovation. So that was my last slide, actually. I think that's been a really great discussion between the three of us. Thanks for your contribution. We do have a couple of questions that have popped in while we've been talking. So let me just. There's a few. How long have we got? Right, I'll pick 3, and hopefully that will be enough. Right. So this is coming with DORA, NIS2, and the UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill coming up. What regulatory impacts do you foresee specifically for SMEs? So that's quite a tough one. I think I've touched on the regulatory landscape a couple of times through our discussion. And what I think it's all about is that conscious cybersecurity. A lot of the regulations talk about proportionality. So it's not necessarily that the small businesses need to implement their own, their own internal SOC, their own strategic tooling and things like that, but they do need to be conscious about the risk that they're taking and have a considered view and a strategy as to how they're mitigating that. And like I said, 90% of UK businesses are small to medium-sized enterprises, and the new regulations that are coming in, they're focused on UK resilience, and that means that 90% need to enhance the part they play on that wider resilience. And so I think it's going to become ever more important for those small businesses to pay attention to cybersecurity, look at how they can comply, and really with legislation, and think about what measures can I afford to put in place. And I think, again, the key thing to that is, if you're struggling with that, not ignoring it, and maybe reaching out to any of those email addresses on the screen, or Red Helix to provide that advice and that understanding to help you plot your journey.
I think it's also important, Tom, to realise when you look at the regulations, and when you hear about the regulations in the press and the media and in cyberspace, a lot of the, I'm going to use the word hype, but a lot of the messaging is about what will happen if you don't meet this regulation, what the fine is, what the time scale is. It's £20 million or 30% of your annual whatever the numbers are. Yeah, and there's a lot of fear mongering and bad news around them. Actually, when you look at the regulations, what they're asking you to do is very sensible things. Things like vulnerability patching, managing remote access, managing your logs, stuff like that. It's stuff all companies should be doing. It's what we've been banging on about for the last half an hour and for the last 30 years. You know, but so a regulation isn't a bad thing, and it shouldn't be seen as a bugbear. It should be seen as an opportunity to make your security posture better.
Absolutely. And I think underlying all of that, you know, we're all in business, right? And I think it's really important that we secure the UK economy, because it's going to really help our GDP. It's going to bring international investment, and I think that's really important. And these regulations are going to be very important in growing the UK economy as we go forward on that foundation of security. There's a question that's come in here, Rob, which definitely will sit nicely with you. What should businesses prioritize when choosing cybersecurity tools to maximize effectiveness and cost efficiency?
Oh, that old chestnut. All right.
Yeah.
So, in the honest answer is every business is slightly different and what they should prioritize. And that should be after a discussion, you know, at board level of what is important to that organization. You know, how long can they function without, I know, their IT system working effectively? You know, is it an hour? Is it a day? Is it a week? Because depending on that answer will depend where you start your journey here. But that said, I always start with some really simple hygiene stuff, which every company can do. It's not expensive, and it's really obvious. But it's amazing how many companies we see haven't thought about it yet. You know, so you know, we talked about passwords earlier. You know, the number of free or really cheap sort of enterprise grade password keepers, which now exist, you know, makes keeping passwords really easy, really secure. It comes up with random characters of 27 characters for you, so you don't have to. It remembers them for you, you know, so you don't have to write it down on a bit of a post-it note. So that's just simple hygiene, which is, you know, next to nothing, but really effective at sort of keeping the hackers out. Now, likewise with two-factor authentication, you know, there's free, you know, on Google and Microsoft, and there's paid versions like Duo and the likes of that. Now, if you're not using two-factor authentication, I can't remember the last time I looked at an app on my iPhone or whatever which didn't give me the opportunity to turn on two-factor authentication, you know, and yet still loads of people aren't doing it. So it's really simple things like, you know, keeping an eye on your patching, you know, having a asset database of the equipment and the services and the software and applications you're using in your environment, and then just, you know, once a week, whatever, check in that there's been no vulnerabilities issued against those, and if they are, work out what your maintenance window is and when you can patch them, you know. And if you look at the regulations, what I was saying earlier, that's what those regulations are telling you to do. And half the time it's not difficult, it's not particularly expensive, but somewhere along the lines, particularly in the sort of SME market, we all think cybersecurity is difficult and expensive, and you kind of get a lot of organizations just sticking their head in the sand and saying, I don't understand this, it's all too complicated. If I stick my head in the sand long enough, it's all going to go away. Now, unfortunately, we've seen, you know, over the years that, you know, 60% of businesses in the small to medium sized space who have a cyber attack don't exist in 6 months' time. You know, they don't get past the recovery phase. So sticking your head in the sand is really not a good business risk, and you really shouldn't do it.
Yeah, and I think interestingly that point leads on to the next question that we've got, which is how does a strong cybersecurity posture impact supply chain relationships? And I think it's that trust, and it's that business benefit that you can actually see from improving your security situation to actually give you benefit and actually grow your business and enhance what you're doing, which some people don't make those connections all the time. So I think in answer to this question, you know, if you have a mature cybersecurity posture, if you have a conscious cybersecurity thought within the business, you're doing risk management well, you've got a great partner who you're working with who's maybe delivering a managed security service, and you can convey that confidence in your own position to businesses that you're hoping to work with in the future, that you're hoping to get that contract with, you're hoping to join their supply chain, but also if you have businesses joining your supply chain, inherently by using these sorts of tools and by having this sort of attitude, you're going to be more secure. You'll have better relationships with the business ecosystem that you're involved with, and because you're less likely to cause them trouble and issues. And nobody wants to have that sort of downtime when with people from your supply chain who you've partnered with who hadn't taken those measures to be conscious about how they're dealing with the cybersecurity risk. I think that's all we've got time for. We've come to the end of our time. It's been great to have those discussions. I think we've unpacked a lot of issues. And what I would say is to anyone that's watching this, if you want to get in touch, if any of those issues have sparked thoughts in your head, or if you're struggling with your cybersecurity journey, get in touch with the points of contact on the screen. We'll be more than happy to chat through these sorts of things and help you find your way, because we do recognize it's a really complicated landscape, but that's exactly why we at Red Helix are here to assist, and we have put together the service we have because we think it's going to be of real benefit. So with that, Rob, Scott, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you who have been watching, and tune in next time. Take care.
Cheers, Tom.
Cheers.
Cheers.